looking at Genesis chapter 31. And we were looking at this relationship that was going on between an uncle and a nephew. All right. And so Laban is the uncle, and he's the one that has the land. This is the place where Jacob went to after Jacob had another issue with another family member, and that was who? His brother. Because his brother was going to kill him. And his brother was going to kill him after the father died. And he was going to kill him because Jacob tricked his father. And Jacob tricked his father because he was instructed to trick his father by his what? By his mother. Because his mother, good morning, sir. His mother heard about what was going on with with Jacob, with Esau, and Isaac was going to bless who? Esau. But Rebekah knew by God's word that spoke to her that actually Jacob was supposed to be the one that was, and so all of that kind of trickled in and turned into a situation where we are at this point, and looking at Jacob and dealing with Laban. So now we're at the point where the uncle and the nephew have been working together for several years. All right. And we also saw that in Jacob's own house, in his home, he had an issue because when he was working initially for Laban, he was working for, he said, the payment will be, give me one of your daughters. Give me Rachel. And he said, sure. But when the time came, he didn't get Rachel. He got who? Leah. And then so he said, well, work for me for another 7 years and you can have Rachel. So he's been working now for these two daughters, and that are now his wives. And for Laban's daughters that are his wives. And so now, when they now are together, now there's another issue of what? Who can produce children? Rachel can't have any children, and Leah is bringing forth children left and right. And then so Rachel gets an idea, and she says, well, I'm going to give my handmaid to my husband. And then she has children in her stead. It's nothing new. We saw that back with who? Abraham and Sarah. Well, then when Leah saw that, Leah said, hey, I'm going to do the same thing. So now Jacob, who fell in love with one woman, now has what? Two wives and two concubines. So that's 4 women. And you think that's something. Wait till we get to Solomon. I'll tell you. Think about the Bible. It tells the truth. It pulls all that stuff out the closet. Let you see what's going on. Well, anyway, so now when we talked about the story, in that story of how they struggled, and the naming of the children were related to the issues and the emotions they were feeling. And so when you look at the names of the kids, you can actually tell a story just by the naming of the children as to what was going on. All right. And so now we're at a point where Laban came back to, I should say Jacob came to Laban and said, hey, it's time for me to leave. Let me go. And then Laban said, well, wait a minute, man. Let me offer you a different salary. And so he said, I'll tell you what I'll pay you. And then remember, he said, well, we're going to separate the sheep, the ones that had spots and speckles versus the solid colored ones. The solid colored ones were going to be Laban's, and the spot and the speckled and different ones were going to be Jacob's. But Jacob had a method, and keeping in mind, it's not the method that produced the blessing, because even Laban knew. He said, I know I'm being blessed because of your relationship with what? With God. That's why I'm being blessed. And so when you sometimes look at all that Jacob was doing here, sometimes people will look at that and go, well, I wonder if we duplicate what he did, will we get the same result? And my answer to that would be no. Because to get the same result, you have to have the same relationship. And you have to be given that same instruction by God. So when you're going through your life and you're doing certain things and God is blessing you, keep in mind that it's not so much all the time because of your strategy or your system or your friendships or your mannerism, is that you know the Lord. That's the key. But the Lord does what? He uses that. he gives us prerequisites and things to kind of keep in mind. He says, if you be kind, he can utilize that in your what? In your benefit, in your behalf. If you be generous, God can take your generosity and use it for what? Your benefit. So a lot of times people think, well, it's just being kind, and being kind is good. But being kind and knowing God is what brings the favor of God, and that's the key. That's the thing that we want to always try to keep in mind. All right. So with that, let's go ahead into our reading, and let's follow this story a little further. Genesis chapter 31. Let's take a listen.
Chapter 31. And he heard the words of Laban's son, saying,
Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory.
And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, Return unto the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flock, and said unto them,
I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before, but the God of my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times. But God suffered him not to hurt me. If he said thus, The speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, The ringstraked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ringstraked. Thus God has taken away the cattle of your father, and given them to me. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes, and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ringstraked, speckled, and gristled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ringstraked, speckled, and gristled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred.
And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him,
Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours, and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do.
Then Jacob rose up, and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle, and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Padam Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river, and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the 3rd day that Jacob was fled. And he took his brethren with him, and pursued after him 7 days' journey, and they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, What hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives taken with the sword? Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, with tabret, and with harp? And hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Thou hast now done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. But the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longedst after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? And Jacob answered and said to Laban,
Because I was afraid. For I said, Peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, taken to thee.
For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tents, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent, and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images, and put them in the camel's furniture, and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father,
Let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me.
And he searched, but found not the images. And Jacob was wroth, and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban,
What is my trespass? What is my sin, that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff? What hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. Of my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was, in the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle, and thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me, surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God hath seen mine affliction, and the labor of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight.
And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone, and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren,
Gather stones.
And they took stones, and made an heap, and they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. And Laban said, This heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Gilead. And Mizpah, for he said, The Lord watch between me and thee, when we are absent one from another. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us, see, God is witness betwixt me and thee. And Laban said to Jacob, Behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. The God of Abraham, and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread. And they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up, and kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed, and returned unto his place.
All right. Here we go. So, we see this relationship between Jacob and Laban come to an end. But it didn't come to a smooth ending, did it? Sometimes that's just how it is. It's time to move along. It's time to go your way. And it don't always have to be, well, when we go our different ways, we always going to do what? Agree. And sometimes the Lord allows that. The funny thing that I always look at, and I say funny, but I just find it odd, that in the book of Acts, where Paul and Paul and Barnabas, I might be getting it wrong, Paul and Silas, Paul and Barnabas, they couldn't get along. Yeah, it was Barnabas, and the reason why they didn't get along, now here's 2 mighty men of God in the book of Acts that had an issue with one another. But both of them have real powerful and strong relationships with God. So now if you both are loving God, but y'all can't work together, and The problem between them was that Mark was Barnabas's nephew, and Mark couldn't take it, and he ran away. And Paul was like, "I'm never bringing this guy with me again." And Barnabas was considered to be the son of consolation. He was one that was easy to allow somebody to be forgiven and given a second chance. And so he told Paul, "Well, let's give him a second chance. Let's bring him with us this time. He'll do better." And Paul was like, "No, I'm not bringing that guy with me." When we took him to the last outing, he ran away scared and worried, and he couldn't take it. So I'm not bringing him with me. And so they had that little contention. Well, God said separate the two. God didn't come in and fix it. He said what? Separate the two. You go your way because you have a philosophy of how you want to do things, and you got a philosophy on how you want to do things. And what's interesting is that somebody might want to say, "Well, Lord, tell us which one is what? Right." You ever get into a situation where you think you're right and the other person think they're right? And sometimes we have that mindset that somebody has to be right and somebody has to be what? Wrong. Not all the way. Now, that's not always true. There are times when both persons' points of view work perfect for them. But they are two different what? Points of view. This is why we always, a lot of times, have arguments, because a lot of times I want to take my point of view and I want to put it on you. And it works for me, and I know it works. You can't tell me it don't.
Right.
That don't mean it's going to work for you. And that's the aspect. And one of the beautiful things I think the scripture shows us is that your relationship with God is your relationship, which is why you can't take my relationship and apply it to you. I can't take your relationship and apply it to me, because yours won't work for me, although it works all day for you. Right? And so there's a lot of different things we're coming to find out that about health, about diet. And me and Wayne was talking earlier about fish. Fish is healthy. It's a good food to eat, but it don't work for me because I'm allergic to it. So you give me fish, I'm gonna be coughing and having problems breathing. All right. So everybody's got to make sure that you are trying to find that circumstance and situation that works for you. And so Laban and Jacob, they both think that their points of view are right. And what we're going to see here is that God's going to go in and he's going to let Laban do what he does, but he's also going to tell Laban, "Listen, you can go down there, you can talk to Jacob, but don't you do him no harm, because what Jacob is doing, he's right in." So we'll kind of break this down. That's just an overall look at it. But let's break it down. I'll take a look at it verse by verse here. And so in the beginning of chapter 31, it says, "And he heard the words of Laban's sons." And what is it? The he is Jacob. Heard the word of Laban's sons, saying, "Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and of that which our fathers hath, he's gotten all this glory." So the sons of Laban are recognizing that God is blessing who? Jacob. And so when Laban and Jacob got together and were discussing the wages, and Jacob was like, "Well, I tell you what, every animal that has any kind of spot or blemish on it, let that animal be mine, and all the solid colored animals, those will be yours." And so what Laban did, he took all the spotted ones at that particular time away and gave it to his sons, and left Jacob with all the what? All the plain colored ones. But it just so happened that you would have a plain colored, two plain colored rams, and they would mate and end up with a speckled baby. And the speckled belonged to who?
Jacob.
It belonged to Jacob. And so no matter how many of the solid colored animals that made it, they all seem to always have a child that was speckled. And so now Laban's sons are like, "We're not getting any increase in our flock." It seems like every time we turn around, every new animal, and even the ones that happen to be born solid colored, those are the feeble looking animals. Those are not the strong. The strong animals are always speckled or spotted or have some kind of, and they belong. The agreement was those kind belong to who?
Jacob.
To Jacob. So the sons are upset. They feel like we're out of the loop, and you have to be careful with certain things, because see, when it's your time to be blessed, God will bless what you're doing when it's your time. And you can't worry about, well, why is this happening to this person? Why? When it's your time, it's your time. When God has his hand on you, you're going to be blessed. And so the sons were upset because they're watching what God is doing. All God is doing to Jacob what he promised Jacob. Remember when Jacob was running from Esau? And Jacob saw a ladder and when he was laying down there, and when he made put rocks down for pillows, and he saw angels ascending and descending, and he knew then that God was with him, and he made a little altar there to remember that place. We're going to get back to that in just a bit. And so he knew that God was with him, and that's the key. If you know God is with you, it don't matter. It don't have to go the way you think it should go. It don't have to go the way you planned it. You just have to wait and watch God do what? Work it out. And that then is the key. All right. So Jacob behold the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not towards him as before. All right. So Laban is looking at Jacob a little funny now, because he's realizing everything I seem to do, he still comes out ahead. And Laban is looking always as though he's getting the short end of the stick. And Jacob, and Jacob is getting the blessing. Well, that's because what? God has blessed him. Look at verse 3. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers, to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. Look at that. What he said? He said, I will be with thee. God being with you. That's the answer right there. It's not the scheme. It's not the mechanism. It's not the, all the stuff that we think that we can do. Is God with you? Because if God is with you, then it's going to work out the way the Lord wants it. Now, I didn't say it's going to work out the way what you want it. It's going to work out the way the Lord wants it. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Because a lot of times we can set our emotional state based upon things working the way I want them to work. Right? I want this to be a certain way. I want to be able to do certain things. And God will let you know, no. Set your emotions upon what it is that you know I'm doing for you. Not what you're doing and achieving your own particular goals. Because we all have goals. There's nothing wrong with having goals. We've got things we want to do, things we want to be have accomplished. But the key is God with you? Because if God is with you, then whether you struggle or whether you have a time of ease, your comfort is in that God sees. That's where you can relax in. All right? Because it's not always easy to relax and struggle. It's not. A lot of times when you're in struggle, you get anxious. You get frustrated. And you know what else happens in struggle? You start looking for somebody to what?
Blame.
To blame. See, we got to be careful with that, because struggle can bring out all kinds of nasty attitudes in us, right? All right, so we have to make sure that we just allow us within your heart to know that God is with me. Jesus said that the Lord sees the little sparrow. They wrote the song. His eye is on the sparrow. I know he what? Watches me. All right, so Jacob went and called Rachel and Leah into to the field unto the flocks, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not towards me as before. So he's saying that the father's looking at him like he ain't liking me. He knows that whatever blessings he's getting is because of God blessing us, but he's also recognizing that since we've made this agreement, that all of the blessings are coming down to who? To Jacob. And now the father's getting a little upset. And so Jacob recognizes it, and he tells Leah and Rachel about that. Verse 6, and it says, and ye know, with all my power I have served your father. So he's saying, I did everything I could for your father. Even when it came down to working the 14 years to serve, to have you guys as my wives. Verse 7, and your father has deceived me. All right, we talked about that, right? and has changed my wages how many times? 10 times. Why is he changing his wage 10 times? For what purpose?
Trying to keep everything for himself.
He's trying to manipulate it. He can't just come out and steal it and say, you know what, I'm taking everything you got. Because that makes him a bad guy. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to go the political way. I'm gonna try to twist it just a little way. We're gonna say it, we're gonna add this to it. And in his mind, he's thinking by me adding that, I'm gonna tilt the scales a little bit to what? My advantage. And that's a lot of times what we try to do. I'm gonna try to sound fair. I want to sound, like I'm trying to do the right thing. But in reality, I'm really trying to find a way to get my advantage through. And that's something that, as human nature, that's just what we do. We do that. I mean, we do that from the time we were a child. You sit a bag of candy. One bag has 2 pieces of candy. The other one has 8. And you put it in front of a child. Say, take whichever one you want. They're going for 8. Why? That's just in us. That's just how we are. But the first thing we got to do is do what? Recognize it. Can you identify that in yourself and admit? So I didn't say you could fix it. I said you could do what? Recognize it. Because we can't fix it. Only thing we can do is ask God to help us in it. Because we are born in what? Sin. And shaped in iniquity. That means we have DNA of sin and we are nurtured in sin. Born and shaped. So therefore, we're going to have all these little funny ways and stuff about it. But then if we recognize it, then we can purposely say, you know what? Everything in me says take the 8. Because now you're grown, not the child anymore. But I want to help somebody else, so I'm going to take the 2, let somebody else get the 8. Now you do that what? Consciously. Not because it's just, something that you always knew. You had to come to that what? Conclusion. Right? And so that's part of development and learning. And you usually get that with what? Years. With maturity. You usually gain that. Right? But the key is you're okay taking the 2 because you recognize that it's just not about the 2. It's about who I know and who knows me. Because if I know God, God can take that 2 and turn it into an abundance. All right. So he says, by change my wage 10 times, look at verse 8, and it says, and he has said, if the speckle shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckle. And if he said, thus the ringstraight shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ringstraight. So it didn't matter what Laban said. Whatever he said, that's what I ended up getting. And he can't change that. And so God, and why is that? Because God was with Jacob. Thus God has taken away the cattle of your father and has given them to me. And that's why Laban is what? Upset. All right? And it came to pass that at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream. Now here's a description we'll see here in verse 10 going down to like 13, rather to 12, where you wonder, why did Jacob start doing all this stripping of the bark and putting things in the cow's water? We talked about that last week. It's in the last chapter. And you can see now that he's saying, well, he saw this in a dream. God showed him what to do. So it wasn't like he was doing something that he came up scientifically. God showed him what to do. And he says, but the angel spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, here am I. And he said, lift up now thy eyes and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ringstraight and speckled and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban has done unto you. So he's letting them know that no matter what color the natural eye saw that ram to be, if you looked at it from a standpoint of what it was going to produce, it was always going to produce that which was promised to you. Whether it was brown, black, blue, or green, it was going to come out ring straight or speckled. All right? And so now, that's the other thing. Sometimes we'll look at situations, and from the natural eye, it looks like that don't seem like that's going to work. But if we could see things spiritually, we would see God's favor working in these things, and oh no, and actually it's exactly what God said. It's there. All right. So Jacob understood this, and he goes on and he says, and he says, I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointed the pillow. Remember we talked about that, right? Where he made the pillow because he saw the ladder, and where thou vowest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out of this land. So now, who's telling Jacob to leave?
God.
God's telling Jacob to leave. Therein is the key. Jacob wanted to leave. Jacob thought it was time to go. He's like, but now he's got what? Confirmation. God is saying, everything that's in your feelings emotionally and how you're feeling and how you're thinking is lining up with what I'm about to tell you. Look at that. Well, wait a minute, but how did that all line up? It lined up because of what? Problems with Laban, all right? Issues and trickery that happened. Laban switching and changing the wages. You know, you get to the job, and the job's always trying to manipulate it so that the workers don't seem like they're getting what they need. Is God with you? God will work that out. Somehow or another, when it's all said and done, you'll be like, wow, you know what? I did better this year than I thought I was going to do. Well, because God's with you. And so we have to always try to keep that in mind. And he says that, you know, I'm with you. And in verse, where are we at here? Verse 14. Yeah. So he said, arise and go into the land where I will show you. So now God is showing Jacob that my plan for you is according to even what you are desiring. And that's a nice feeling there. When your emotions and your feelings line up with what God's trying to tell you to do. All right. 14. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? So they look at it from strictly a financial and a how is it working for me point of view. And they say, well, there's nothing here for us. You know, our father don't have anything to offer us. If something was to happen to Jacob, if Jacob was to die, there was the daughters were to go back to the father's house. But what they're saying, if something was to happen to Jacob, if we went back to our father's house, what do they got for us?
Nothing.
He ain't got nothing for us. So they're like, yeah, we're ready to go too. Okay. Are we not counted of him as what? Strangers. He would treat us like a stranger. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't even look at it where, you know, we deserve the dowry. Because see, back then, you would give, when you were getting married, you would give the father of the daughter a dowry. It's something of wealth. And the father would put that aside just in case something was to happen to the husband. The husband was to leave or the husband was to die. That father now had a substance that he could use to give to the daughter and say, well, now you can at least live off of this. Well, Rachel and Leah said, well, our father took whatever Jacob has given him in these 14 years that he worked for us, and he spent it on himself. So there's nothing left for us. He's going to treat us like a what? A stranger. So he's like, yeah, we're ready to go. We don't have any reason to stay here. It would be nice to be close to family because if something did happen to you, I could at least go back to dad. But I can't do that now. All right. And so he says he's quite devoured up all our money. For all the riches which God has taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now, whatsoever God has said unto thee, do. So what Rachel and Leah said, whatever God has said to you, you go ahead and do it. It says, then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels. So he put them on some camels. You know, we get ready to do some what? Some long traveling. And he carried away all his cattle and all the goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Paran, for to go to Isaac his father and to the land of Canaan. So he's getting ready to what? Go back home. All right. And Laban, when he went to shear his sheep, so he went away to go shear his sheep into another land where he's going to shear his sheep. He's going to sell it. You know, he's going to another land where, you know, he's going to cut the wool off the lamb, bring them to people, sell it, then he'll come back. So while he was doing that, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. So when the father was away, shearing the sheep, what did Rachel do?
Stole more cattle.
Stole, not the cattle. What did she steal?
The images.
Images. The idols. So now let's pause here for a second. Rachel's getting ready to leave. Jacob is following the leadings of God. And Rachel's getting ready to leave. And she has watched how God has blessed Jacob, her husband. But yet, now that she's getting ready to leave, she can't leave other things that she has learned to trust in from a what? From a child. And those are what? Her father's what? Her father's gods. So she feels if I'm going to leave, I need the gods that I grew up with to go with me. So now, the scripture said, can we serve two gods?
No.
And we go back now to Rachel's circumstance. Remember initially when Rachel was with Jacob, the Rachel could not what? Bear children. But finally God opened her. She said, she went to her husband and said, give me a child or I what? Or I die. And Jacob said, am I God? You know? And then when she finally did, when God did open up, allow her to have a child, she said, you know, I'm going to have another one. And she is. And actually, at this particular time, she's pregnant now. I may be a little ahead of myself. Maybe she's not right at this time. No, she's not pregnant yet. But she will be in a little bit. And so then now she is not trusting like Jacob in who? In God. She's also feels she's got to take the father's idols. So she stole. It's amazing you can have a God that somebody can steal. You want to serve a God like that? There's a lot of people, now you laugh at that, but there's a lot of people that they have gods that people can steal. Because some people, their God is what? Money. And folks can steal your God. Some people, their God is their car or their house or their husband or their wife. Or somebody can steal your husband. Somebody can steal your wife. You don't want gods that somebody can what? Steal. All right. So I find that interesting that this is the circumstance between this father and his daughter. But this is how Rachel was raised, which speaks to another conversation that we could have about it's important to rear up kids with just the hearing and the knowing of who God is. That's important because when times get tough and when things get to where the rubber hits the road and maybe you ain't around anymore as mom or dad, that your children can lean upon the same thing that you leaned upon when you went through your struggle. I know, my mom trusted in God. My dad trusted in God. So I'm going to trust in God. Right? And then that's an important inheritance. And so Rachel is leaning back onto what her father leaned on. So she steals the gods. Verse 20, and it says, and Jacob stole away. Now Rachel is stealing what? The gods. And Jacob is doing what? Stealing away. He's what? Sneaking off. So there's a lot of little stealing going on here, right? So he stole away unawares to Laban. So Laban didn't know the gods were gone, and he didn't even know that his daughters and son-in-law were gone. So when he comes back from shearing those sheep, and he's like, "Ooh, I made a bunch of money." Come back and things have what? Changed. There's some different circumstances here. All right. And sometimes we have to recognize that. Sometimes you see a family member that you ain't seen in a while, and when last time you saw them, they were like 12 years old, and now you see them and they're like 18. Well, guess what? They done changed, and that's a good change, right? Other times you see some you saw them and they were like, okay, they were decent, nice people. Next time you see them, they struggling with all kinds of issues. So sometimes it's changed to the negative. All right, and so when Laban comes back, things change. He went out, thinking I'm just going to do what I normally do. He come back and there's issues. The people are gone, and then when he goes to go to his gods to find out what's going on, the gods are gone. All right. 21 it says, so he he fled with all that he had, and rose and passed over the river, and set his face towards the Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day. And I find that interesting. So he was gone for how many days before he found out about it? 3 days. All right. That's has any significance? How long was our Lord in the ground buried? 3 days. All right. And you'll see that all through the Bible. That's just something just to point out that the Lord uses that as kind of an indicator and a marker that particular thing is a common thread that you're going to see through the whole Bible, and it's going to link up initially and finally to our Lord. All right, but we'll see that as we go through all this Old Testament. So he says Jacob had fled, and he took his brethren with him and pursued after him for what? A 7-day journey, and they overtook him in the Mount of Gilead, and God came to Laban. Now look at here. So, now, I find this real interesting. Laban had his gods what? Stolen. But now, who comes to God? Who comes to Laban? God. So your personal gods that you trust in was stolen, but the God of the universe has now what? Come to you. All right? But here's the thing. Laban doesn't still even recognize it and give him the respect and the ability to just begin to serve him. I don't need the God that was stolen now that I have met you, the God of all creation. Laban doesn't take that route, which is kind of sad. See, a lot of people say, well, I wish God would come to me and show me who he is. Well, a lot of people are just like Laban. God can come to you all day long and you're still going to do what? Your own thing. And that's what Laban's going to do. And the only thing that Laban's going to not do is what God told him he better not do. So he know God got the power. He know God can do whatever, but he still won't serve him. And I find it interesting too, and we're going to see this a lot, and I just want to bring it to your attention. I'm not going to expand too much on it, but he says he came to Laban the Syrian. And we're going to see this word, the Syrian, and we're going to show you how we can connect that from time to time as we see it to Satan. Because Satan is oftentimes related and compared to as the Syrian or the Assyrian. And we'll see that from time to time. But I just find it interesting that it says, and God came to Laban, the Syrian. All right? Because see, God goes to the devil and tells the devil what he can and can't do too. Remember, the devil wanted to get to Job, right? And God told, okay, this is what you're going to do. But when God went to the devil and told him, the devil wasn't like, well, I'm just going to stop being the devil. I'm just going to try to be the best I can be or whatever. The devil ain't do that. Laban didn't stop being who? Laban either. He still continued to be who Laban was. All right. So that's why I say you can see that connection a lot of times with Satan when you see that. All right. And said unto him, take heed that thou speak not unto Jacob either good or bad. In other words, you stay out of this. Don't you try to hurt or help him. He don't need your help, and you better not try to what? Hurt him. All right? Important thing to keep in mind. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob was pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said unto Jacob, what hast thou done? So now Laban comes what? Angry. He's coming angry. The man just met God the night before. And now he's coming what? Angry. All right? See, that just shows you sometimes God can be right in your presence and you can still be stuck on your own self. Especially when you are your own God. All right? So he says, what hast thou done? This is Laban talking to Jacob. Thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and has carried away my daughters as captives. So basically he's saying, you kidnapped my daughters. You stole my daughters and taken them with the sword. So look what he said. He's like, you taken them, you made them go. They wouldn't have never left me. You must have made them leave. Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly? So why did you sneak away and stolen away from me and didst not tell me? So he's like, why don't you come to me and ask me and share with me? And look what Laban's going to say here. Now, you tell me if he's telling the truth or not. Look at this. Let me read 27 again. Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly and stolen away from me, and did not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, that means with joy, with song, with tabrets, we're going to dance, and with harps. So now, you tell me, if Jacob had came to Laban, would Laban have thrown a farewell party?
No.
He would have, instead
Some way to work some more.
instead of negotiating his wages 10 times, this would have been the what? The 11th time. We're going to come up with some new wages to keep you here. So he ain't telling the truth here, is he? He's like, I would have sent you away with all this. I would have gave you a farewell party. No, he wouldn't. And see, but that's once again, I find interesting that the scripture linked Laban the Assyrian. Then pay attention now to what Laban's doing, because you're going to see a strategy that Satan used. Satan tried to tell you, oh, we could have had a good time. This would have been fine. Everything would have been wonderful. Be careful, right? Because Satan don't always come as the monster. A lot of times he come as what?
Good guy.
The good guy. I'm on your side. I'm your friend. I got everything, that we can do. Everything's gonna be good. Watch out for that Syrian Satan. All right, so let's keep going. And has not, it says, and has not suffered me to kiss my sons. He's like, I would have gave them a farewell hug and kiss. And my daughters, thou hast done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of my hand to hurt you. Now, see, this is what Laban thinks. But that's what the devil does too. I can hurt you. All right? Well, like the devil wanted to hurt Job. But he said I couldn't, because you have a ward around him. You have a hedge around him. He said, but God put a hedge around me. He says, but God, the God of your fathers, spake unto me. See, he didn't even say God that I saw yesterday, or the God that I'm beginning to trust in. He's disassociating. The God of your fathers spake unto me yesternight, saying, take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob neither good or what? Or bad. And now therefore, it says, and now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longethly after thy father's house. In other words, I know you want to go because you are longing to go back to your father's house. Yet, wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? So he's like, now I know you want to go back to your father's house, and the God of your father spoke to me, but why did you steal my gods? All right, so he's saying this to who?
Jacob.
To Jacob. Who stole the gods?
Daughter.
Rachel stole the gods. All right, so he's right, and that somebody stole them, but he's accusing the wrong person. All right, and Jacob answered and said, now Jacob's at the point now. You ever sometimes you just lose it. You get to that point where you just got to be like, all right, I got to call a spade now, and Jacob's about to lose it. He's going to say it like it is, right? Look at this now. You can imagine the tonnage in this. I'm reading this, but he's and Jacob answered and said unto Laban, because I was afraid. All right, so he's letting know, number one, I'm afraid of you. In other words, and that means what? I don't trust you. I don't really. For I said peradventure thou wouldest taken by force thy daughters from me. I was afraid, because you would have taken your daughters by force. You would have hurt me. All right. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. So I was afraid of you because you would have done this to me and taken your daughters, and you're accusing me of taking your gods. Well, I tell you what. Whoever you find the gods with, that you feel we stole it, whoever has them, let not that person live. In other words, kill that person. We're going to kill him. Because Jacob is what? Jacob's had enough. You accusing me of stealing your gods. Let him not live. Before our brethren, discern thou what is thine and with me. So see if you can find anything that is yours that's with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went in unto Jacob's tent, and unto Leah's tent, and unto the two maidservants' tent, and he found them not. Then went he out into Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now he's in the tent where the what?
Gotcha.
Where the guards are. All right. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. So she put them in her camel, and then she did what? She sat on top of it. And Laban searched all the tents and found them not. And she said to her father, let it not despise my lord that I cannot rise before thee, because the custom of women is upon me. So what she's saying is she's having her monthly. All right. So she said, I don't want to get up. All right. So this is why I had to remember that at this point she was not expecting, because I remembered this. So she's like, and so he's like, well, I don't want to really search over there anyway, because there was we're going to see when we get into the book of Leviticus, there's a whole kind of circumstance. Why is my wife calling me? I just want to find it. Are you okay?
Hey.
We're still in class. Hello? I'll call you back.
Talking. You going
All right. She's home trying to get Elijah ready for tomorrow. All right. So where was I? Where was we?
35.
Thank you, sir. All right. So, and she said unto her father, okay, let not displease you, my lord, that I cannot arise, for therefore the custom of women is upon me. Okay, we talked about that. So he searched but found not the images. So he searched and he couldn't find the images because who's sitting on them? Rachel. All right, in her circumstances. All right. So 36. Now Jacob, I told you, Jacob he's had enough. So 36, and Jacob was what? Wroth. What's another word for wroth? Angry, upset, mad, right? Pissed off. However you want to say it. He is not liking what and he's going to let him have it. And chid with Laban, and Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? He wants to know, what did I do wrong? What is my sin? Thou hast so hotly pursued after me. He wants some answers. What did I do wrong? Why are you pursuing after me? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff. He still didn't search the right place though. But searched all my stuff. What hast thou found of all thy household? Of all my household stuff. Set it before me. And he says, we'll judge betwixt us. All right? 38. 20. Now here he goes. 38. This 20 years have I been with thee. Your ewes and your she-goats I have not cast their young. In other words, I haven't taken anything that was yours. The rams and the flocks have I not what? Eaten. I didn't use any of your animals for my nourishment. All right? That which was torn by beasts, or if an animal or if any kind of beast came in and attacked any of their herd, I brought it not to thee. I didn't come to you and say, oop, that's your loss. He took it. He said, I bare the loss of it. Of my hand didst thou inquire it. Wherefore, whether stolen by day or stolen by night, if anything was missing, he took the blame. Thus I was in the day, and the drought consumed with me, and in the frost by night, sleep departing, in other words, staying awake, trying to keep animals away. All right. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I have served thee 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for the cattle. And thou hast changed my wages 10 times, except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac had been with me. Surely thou would have sent me away what? Empty. You would have given me what? Nothing. All right, and that's the truth. Therein is how the Syrian work. Satan don't want you to have what?
Nothing.
Anything. He don't want you to have a thing. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuke you yesterday. So in other words, that God had to make Laban leave you alone. Leave him alone. Just like God does the same thing. Because Satan wants to get to you, but God has to allow Satan to do what? Leave you alone. He knows you working in the... Who's the prince and power of the air? Satan. So he knows we're working in Satan's land. We're at his home. He's got home field advantage. All right? But yet we still have to maneuver and work. Jacob was at whose land? Jacob was in Laban's land. Working and trying to work out the things where Laban's home is. And so that's what we do. But yet God put a protection. Even though he was in Laban's land, God still blessed who? Jacob. And even though we're in the land of sin and where Satan tries to dwell and have power, and the Bible calls him the God of the air, the principality, yet God still does what? Bless us. So you see the relationship here. All right. Yes, even though we're living in a time and a world where things are not ideal, we're not living in the promised eternal realm which God has promised to us. We're not there yet. But at the same time, God has blessed us right where we are. Just like God blessed Jacob while he was in the land that Laban was. All right. So he goes on. It says look, Laban answered and said to Jacob, these daughters, look at what he thinks. See now his true nature's coming out. These daughters are what? My daughters. But I thought he gave them away and he got the dowry. But he still sees them as what? His. And these children are my children. See? So all that belongs. And the cattle are what? My cattle. But wait a minute, you said all the ring straight and the speckle was supposed to be mine. But he sees them still as what? His. That's the nature of Satan. Satan don't care what God has given to you or what you work for. He says it's still what? It's still mine. That's his mindset. Even though God is the God of all creation, Satan still sees himself. And God owns all things. Satan sees himself as the what? The God that owns all things. And that's why he's in conflict with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right? Because Satan thinks everything belongs to him, but it doesn't. Everything belongs to who? To God. It says, what can I do this day unto thee? My daughters are unto thee, or their children, which they have borne. He said, what can I do today? Now, therefore, now look at what he's about to do now. And this is important. We're going to see this. Now, therefore, come thou, let us make a covenant. So we're going to make an agreement. And I and thou, and let it be a witness between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and set up a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones, go get some more stones. And they took the stones and they made a heap. And they did eat there upon that heap. So they had a meal there together. And that was part of the covenant. We're going to share a meal. What I eat and you eat is going into both of us the same food. And this is going to show forth this agreement and this covenant. And then in verse in verse 47, and Jacob called the name of it, that long word which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. And then Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Gilead. And Mizpah, for he had said, the Lord do what? Watch between me and thee when we are absent one from another. Now, haven't you heard that before? People sometimes pray that, may the Lord watch between me and thee while we're what? Absent. And they say it with all good kindness. I want God to watch over you and God watch over me. But that's not the origination of the reason why this was said. This was said because of Jacob's and Laban's anger towards one another. I don't trust you, and you don't trust me. I can't watch you, you dirty, rotten thief, and you can't watch me, you manipulative, gathering, thinking everything is yours guy. but I know who can watch you. God. So that was the reason. So when they were saying, I want God to watch you, not God look over you and protect you. I want God to watch you because I know you're sneaky. I know you're conniving. And so that was the purpose for that, to allow them to feel you might want to do dirt, but I know God is watching you. And in verse 50, he kind of explains it. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters. Now, wait a minute. Here's a man that gave us a man the wrong wife, and now he's upset if he takes another wife. So you can see how, the worst thing you can do to a thief is steal something from a thief. Right? There's nothing that makes a liar more angry than when you what? Tell him a lie. Right? It's amazing how that works. All right? And so he says, no man is with thee, God is witness betwixt me and thee. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap or this pillar to me. Now this is important for harm. This is important because what this is saying is there's a boundary. And the Lord allowed this to happen. He allowed this covenant. There's a boundary. As long as you don't cross this boundary, I'm not going to bother you. And as long as I don't cross the boundary, you're not going to bother me. But if you cross the boundary, then there's some issues. Well, do we have that?
Yeah.
We do. Because, see, there are certain things that if you cross certain boundaries, you enter back into the realm or the land where Satan has control. So people like to do all that. They're praying to familiar spirits. God said we're not supposed to do that. They're playing with Ouija boards and calling up, trying to raise up dead folks and all that stuff, working in witchcraft. You just crossed the what? The boundary. And now see, God says, as long as you ain't crossed the boundary, I'm not going to allow any harm to come to you. But if you cross the boundary, and we're going to see that later on when we get further along in the Old Testament, we're going to see that with King Saul, God's first king that he gave Israel, and King Saul's going to cross that boundary, and Satan's going to snatch him right up. We'll see that. All right. So, and finishing this up now. It says, and the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of your fathers judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifices on the mountain and called his brethren to eat and eat bread. And they did eat bread and tarried all night in the mountain. And early in the morning Laban rose, kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned to his place. All right. So we're gonna stop there, and I'm gonna find out what's going on.